Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Write On, a talent-packed virtual room full of writers and people who hire writers from across the spectrum of children's media to discuss what it takes to keep on working in these testing times. I'm Shana Jackson. I'm your host today. In addition to being an author myself, quick plug of my books, I'm also the artistic director of Sight Gallery in Sheffield, and it's a real shame not to be seeing you on Brown Street this summer. But anyway, let's begin with a big thank you to the sponsor of this session, Milkshake on Channel 5. Now, I start with a plug. Milkshake are looking for new preschool writers, particularly non-white writers, and they're always on the lookout for talent. So they will put forward names to their production teams and give a few scripts to them to be mentored by the head writer, etc. If you are interested in this, you can email Louise Burgess, louise.burgess, Burgess, at channel5.com. And she keeps a database of names and contacts that's also shared with the Nickelodeon International teams. And I'll repeat that email address later on, but yeah, there's something there for you at the start. Without the backing of over 50 companies supporting the conference this year, we couldn't bring you the wide and varied program that you're used to. So we're very, very, very grateful to Milkshake on Channel 5 for supporting this session and being so open to new writers. From the PQA TV stroke CMC 1 minute film competition. At the start of the year, young filmmakers were challenged to make a 1 minute film about who they are, a film that would make us sit up, take notice, and show us their world. You can view all 15 finalists online at pqatv.com and cast your vote. We really encourage everyone to do that and support these exciting young filmmakers. The film you're about to see here is called Why, and it's by Joshua Hayth.
Why are we judged on the ways we want to creatively express ourselves?
Why can't a girl wear these? And why can't a boy wear these?
Why are girls judged for having short hair? And why are boys for having long?
Why do some people in the world choose to hate who we love?
Why can't a boy wear makeup?
And why can't a girl be a footballer?
And why are we hated by some in society because of the person we want to be?
Why is it some in society can't accept and value the person we stand to be?
Why?
Really good questions there, Joshua. Congratulations on your film. So let's get started with our session. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be part of this panel with participants with a wealth of experience in kids TV, publishing, education, digital and gaming. And they're going to give us their verdict on how to vary your writing output and how that can be crucial to a successful career, where the opportunities for expanding your horizons might be. And importantly, they're going to be views from the other side of the writing table. What makes script editors, producers, and publishers want to work with writers? And we're also going to get a general feeling of what the future might hold for the industry, our wordsmiths and our creators after a very, very turbulent 2020. So, a warm welcome to our panel, please. BAFTA-winning producer turned freelance writer and showrunner Adam Redfern, script editor, script producer, and story consultant Lena Byrne, children's book writer and Story Mix founder Jasmine Richards, and games writer and narrative designer David Varela. Unfortunately, the hugely experienced screenwriter, showrunner, and producer Jen Upton couldn't be with us today, and we send her lots of love. If you have any questions for our panel, you can submit these at any time using the heart icon at the top right of your screen, and we'll try and get through as many of those questions as possible towards the end of the session. Now we're going to begin, and I want to start off with Adam, if that's okay. Adam Redfern. It's such a pleasure. Morning, Adam. Such a pleasure to have you on my personal TV show that I'm having this morning. My pleasure. And I wanted to talk to you about going from a producer to freelance TV writing. What's that experience like? How has that been for you?
Yeah, I was a producer at BBC at CBeebies, and a series producer for Go Jetters, the preschool animation, and various other series, live action, and so on before that. And I think what I've always done, I made the jump to freelance maybe easier for myself in that I've always been a producer and a writer at the same time. So not everyone does that, and not everyone has to do that. Plenty of producers don't write, but I've always found it. I've always had a passion for writing, and so I would be one of the lead writers on Go Jetters as much as the series producer, looking after all the scripts and all the writers that we used. And so when I jumped out to freelance, I guess when I knew I was leaving, and obviously I was seeing out a period of a couple of months notice. I guess my advice would be prepare for it as much as you can. So I made sure I was networking to all the writers that I knew that I'd used on Go Jetters and people I knew in the industry. I was making sure a website was ready, good to go on the day that I left, so that I had a shop window for my work. I cut a show reel of some of my written shows and some episodes that had been out of stuff I'd done in children's, so that I could launch a website with a show reel and a short biog. And yeah, I would just start having agent conversations. I was looking for an agent and to be represented. So I guess before you make the jump, to as much preparation so that you are visible and you can point people when you start early freelance conversations with people. You can say, here's my website, and maybe you can write a spec script of something and say, well, here's something I've got, so that you can follow up and send people stuff.
I want spec scripts. I hear a lot about spec scripts. Can you tell me a bit more about what makes a good one? Should you write a spec script around the show that you're hoping to write, or should you write a spec script around something that just particularly interests you?
Yeah, good question. I think both can be very good ideas to do. If you have a favorite show, if you love Adventure Time or SpongeBob or anything that's out there, Gravity Falls, if there's an animated show that you watch all the time just as a fan and know the characters inside out and why they make you laugh, then you spec script an episode of that. Or you could do something completely original, and then there's maybe more work to do, because obviously you have to originate all the characters in the world and so on, but it's your own thing and your own voice might come through clearer on an original spec. And try and write something that the kind of dominant durations in the industry and for what I write for are either 11 minutes or 7 minutes. So if you can write an episode that's 11 minutes long, especially if you're watching shows that have that kind of length, and keep it to that length as well, then yeah, it can be incredibly useful, because even if it's rough around the edges, even if it's an imperfect script, it's something, and it also demonstrates that you're willing to write, which I think is a really important thing, because everyone can introduce themselves with a handshake and say, hey, I really want to write, how do I do it? I want to start writing. Well, write something then, because we're all guilty of delaying and procrastinating and saying, I want to write, but I haven't written anything yet. Get something written. And even if it's not perfect, and if it's just that something that just you can pass to an exec or a producer or another writer and show that you mean business.
Yeah, you know what? That is the best advice, is just to write things. And I'm very guilty of not writing things and crying about it. So that's really, really, really good advice. I wanted to ask one more practical, picky question about script lengths. So if you're writing a script that's industry standard 11 minutes or 7 minutes, how many pages roughly are you looking at for those lengths?
Okay, 11 is I'm currently writing on a few 11-minute shows, and they're about 14 pages. This certainly shouldn't be longer. That's in Final Draft. So standard, any kind of script software should, you shouldn't go beyond 14 pages, and often it's about 105 lines of dialogue. Of course it can vary, and different shows vary and get more or a little less. But 14 pages is a max, I'd say, for 11 minutes.
Okay, excellent. And so you were talking about really great things like putting your website together, which is absolutely the right thing to do, I think, and trying to find yourself an agent. Now, that's a big question. So how do people who are new to the industry or not agented, how do they make themselves known to producers?
Yeah, there are agents out there. When I was looking, I was lucky. Obviously, I was coming out of a CV from BBC as a producer, and I'd written across the department, so I built up that experience. So I was shopping for an agent, having credits on my CV. So yeah, I appreciate for brand new writers, it's difficult, and it's that chicken and the egg. How do I get an agent if I've not been commissioned yet? How do I get commissioned without an agent? But with a bit of Googling and a bit of looking around for children's people who rep children's writers, there are agencies that will take on and unrepresented and new voices and actively search for those. So you can approach agents, but going back to the Spec script, I'd say they'd probably ask, if you've not got any credits yet, they'd say, have you written something? Show us what you've got. So just be ready to put that little bit of work in up front and write something if you're cold calling agents. And you could find one that will represent a new voice, because most agencies spend part of their year looking for that. But also, there's a couple of schemes out there. There's a couple that I thought I'd mention today, but there are opportunities like the BBC Writers' Room is a fantastic space that's at bbc.co.uk/writers room. That's always there. And if you just have a look at the homepage, you soon see that they have schemes and initiatives for brand new voices to just enter competitions and try and get noticed and be mentored by writers. It's similar to maybe the Channel 5 brilliant opportunity you mentioned at the start. And also Nickelodeon, they run, if you Google nickwriting.com, they have both a US-based and an international-facing writers scheme. So again, there are wonderful things out there that, like, I didn't always know about these things, but if you just look at those, then they actively are now open for brand new voices who've never been commissioned, who are unrepresented right now. And if your script is good enough, you might get through and get the opportunity to talk to producers at Nickelodeon and so on. So check those schemes out, and that's just two of a few that are out there.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant advice. And I did another question about BBC Bite Size. I guess in this period where it's lots of uncertainty, we're looking for different opportunities. Are there any particular opportunities for writers in education at the moment, particularly with homeschooling being such a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right that while the lockdown situation has thrown up huge challenges, it's also thrown up demand uniquely in certain areas. And as you say, BBC Bite Size and BBC's really come into its own with we can help home educate, and we can help parents home teach their kids during these sort of tough months. So I got approached to write BBC 5-week block of BBC Bite Size animations. But I guess the reassurance I'd say is I didn't have to be an educationalist or a teacher or an expert in that field. A quick chat with the producer who was briefing me sort of informed me that there would be a set of teacher's notes coming my way, which I was relieved about the subjects that I needed to do, a spreadsheet with the topics on. And suddenly I was thrown into a world of like the Earth's gravitational pull for physics, and hypotenuse and triangles, and finding the angle in your triangle for key stage 3 maths. And I didn't have to know all that. Those notes were given to me. But where I brought in my experience was the brief was, right, can you turn this into 45-minute scripts? 45-second scripts to kind of infographic animation. So I'd say if you're an educationalist and you're looking at angling into children's, now's a really good time because of the unique lockdown year we're in. obviously we're just heading into summer holidays, so the bite-sized work's currently stopped as the summer term ends. But certainly an approach to the BBC if you're an educationalist. And again, if you go on Bite Size, watch the content, and could spec a couple of short scripts, and Bite Size, they're less than a minute. So it's not a lot of work to try out your own writing voice and write some educational, but it has to be light touch education. And the trick is to make it accessible. You could give that a go.
Ooh. Oh, thanks, Adam. Your generosity and your tips are brilliant. Pick your brain a bit more. Do you have any more tips? Any more? Any more for any more?
Yeah, well, yeah. How am I doing? Is it sort of my time to wrap up soon? Do you want to show should we go through my top tips that I think there's a slide for writing?
It is.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, so I was asked what were my 5 golden tips currently. So to explain these, never send a script late or long. So yeah, if you're a writer hired on a show, you will have deadlines, which in a way are your friend, because we all waste time avoiding the writing and faffing about. So, but never, whether it's the outline or the draft, never be late. I've been a producer and a script editor, managing the writing team, and those writers that are just a couple of days late are always emailing in on deadline day with a quick excuse that it won't be quite ready yet. You inevitably think better as a producing team of the ones that just send it in on time. It's not to say things don't happen, like emergencies, illness, family stuff will come up and might delay you. But if so, just communicate with your script editor and producer. Just ask permission to be late or move your deadline. Agree a new deadline, but don't just be late. Think of it as, even though you're remote and sending a script in, it's the same as turning up for work and the morning of your job. Don't be late. And don't be long means don't write your script long. If it needs to be 14 pages for 11 minutes, don't send in 15 pages and go, well, they'll cut that. Cut it yourself. Keep it to time yourself, because why let someone else choose which of your jokes or scenes or beats get thrown out when you can choose yourself? Which leads me neatly to the second golden rule. If in doubt, cut it out. I still have to have a word with myself on ideas that I love, joke in a script that are leaving it too long. I was briefed this month to do a 7-minute script for 7 pages, please, was the brief, clear and simple. 7 pages for 7 minutes. I had a lovely joke in the opening scene I was so pleased with myself about, but it was 7.5 pages, and it wasn't vital for the story. I absolutely loved the joke, and I still love it. And I thought, shall I send it 7.5 pages with a little email explaining, I know it's a bit long, but, and I just had a word with myself, said, no, cut that joke, 7 pages, and they loved the script without that extra beat. Start your story as near to the end as possible, which may sound a bit mad, but what that basically means is never start your opening scene at the start of your episode with, like, everyone's waking up or coming down for breakfast, or everyone's standing around and meeting up and saying, hey, good morning, how are you? Start it bang in the middle of something. Push your beginning towards the end of your story and place it in somewhere exciting. Think of things like, I don't know, the first ever Star Wars film where we're mid-battle being chased by a Star Destroyer right in the opening, and there's conflict going on. You're not meeting Luke Skywalker waking up on the homestead and just having breakfast. You are right in the middle of a battle, so it's more exciting, and the viewer is immediately sucked into your story. Never take notes personally. Note, as a professional writer, you will get notes at every stage of your script, from a paragraph pitch to draft 5. You will have notes and notes and notes from execs, from commissioners, from animation directors telling you can't have that prop or that really complicated, difficult to animate scene, and you just got to cut it because it blows their budget or their scope. So, but notes are part of the process, and they're never personal to you as a writer. They can feel personal when they come in because your story is your baby and you love it, and you should love it. But It's purely everyone's reviewing your script as an objective story that they all want to make better and need to produce on time and on budget. So notes, cuts, and changes are an inevitable part, and they're not personal to you as a writer. And the more you write, the more you'll get a thick skin to that and just go, yeah, the notes are the notes, and I'll just do them. Finally, be ready and willing to change your script to make it better. Everyone should love their first draft that they send in for an episode of something and be really pleased with it. My first drafts are about 3 drafts that I've been through under my own steam, and I've self-edited and changed and tweaked and polished. So I think that's good to go. But then it will need to change for those reasons I cited, from the director's point of view, from the exec point of view, from the broadcaster's point of view. Each stage, if you accept, I know it's going to change to draft 2 and to draft 3 and then a polish and maybe even further than that. If you accept everyone's invested and working on it to make it better and better, then you'll just have a healthy outlook to it all.
There are absolutely brilliant tips, and tips that at times made me feel personally attacked, because I have felt ways about all of these things and have done all of these things. So to hear them from somebody else is very reassuring, and I thank you very much, Adam. You're brilliant. Adam will be back later in the Q&A for a bit more, but now I'd like to bring on script editor Lena Byrne. Lena Byrne. Hello.
Hello, Marla.
How are you doing, Lena?
I'm good, thank you. Can I just say, I'm after learning a really big lesson here. Always try and pitch first, because he's after saying all the good notes I wanted to say.
But we're really glad you're here, Lena, because we wanted to hear, the view from the other side of the writing table. Like, what's the relationship like between the writer and the script editor?
So I've heard it described so many different ways. I've heard it described as their therapist. I've heard you have to say the good and the bad points, and what we can work on for next draft. And I've heard it described that like you're a parent, because you need to look after, if all the scripts are your babies, you have to look after them all, and they're part of your family. I've heard myself described as the spy, because I can tell what everyone else is saying inside, and I can give you insights to what we really need. I've heard one of my favorites, Brian Clark, this writer I use a lot. He sees us as we have a house and we need 10 plumbers to come in and fix the scripts, so that's how he describes it. I kind of see it as really being a team. So me and the writer are a team together. We have to make this work. I also think I'm the writer's cheerleader to them and to the team, all the production. The script, the writer is so important. The script goes to every single person on the production. Everyone reads it, everyone will comment on it, and there's nothing better when they're saying, I love that script, and they're like, yes. Because when the script works, I say, well done, the writer. If the script doesn't work, that's on me.
Oh, is it? I guess it is.
Yeah, it totally is.
So what is it that makes you want to write? What attracts you to a writer? What are you looking for in that relationship?
So it really depends on the type of show that you're doing and what broadcast you're working with. If you're working in the UK or Ireland or in America, for example, a lot of the times at CMC, I've met writers and been able to bring them onto a show, or being able to recommend those writers to someone else if they mightn't have fit our brief. So sometimes you'd be in a writer's room and you can only get to bring in 6 writers. So you go, do you bring in, the writer that you work with and have a shorthand with and they're going to deliver? Or do you take a chance and bring in a new writer, which we always try to do? I always try and bring in a new writer, because how can someone else get hired until someone hires them first? So that's what I try to do. And then I suppose I like to work with writers I've never worked with before. So a lot of the time you'll get recommended a writer from an agent, and an agent you trust. And sometimes what's great, if you work with an agent and you say, I've got a writer for this show, and you give them the brief, and they give you 1 or 2 writers back for it, because sometimes they'll give you 10 writers back and you'll go, you've just given me every writer. How do I know that this writer will be specifically good for this show and this age group? So it's really good if you have an opportunity to really get to know an agent, because then you'll have a shorthand with them where they're going, this is the person that I know will work for this show. Like I was in LA before, and sometimes we go into agencies and we get a day in the office and we get to meet loads of writers, and there'll be some that you'll go, oh, they'll be a really good fit for this show, and then others you'll go, maybe not this show but something else. It's always great to meet with writers.
So what can a writer do to really attract your attention and retain that attraction with you? I'm talking about this like it's dating, I've noticed, and I'm sorry, but also it feels like it's important that you have to have like a really delicate relationship with each other. And what can a writer do to make you want to work with them again, Lena?
Yeah, that's a great question. I pretty much would always want to work with every writer I've worked on, very few exceptions. I suppose going all in with it, there's a lovely sense when you're working on a script, and the writer, as Adam was saying, might be working on 10 other shows at the time and doing so many different scripts. But when you feel a writer is really in there with you and is going, I'm going to make this work, and because that's what my job is. I would be in charge of 40 scripts or 52 scripts at a time. And I'm going, I have to have that script ready in 12 weeks. And someone is on my back going, I need that script. So I need to know, if I'm working with this writer, that they will deliver. What a lot of the time what you need is for them to be able to come into the world you've created and then replicate that and then sprinkle their originality on it. So you want them to be able to have the ability to go, I know what that show is, and then to be able to do their version of it.
Brilliant.
That really helps when a writer can do that.
I'm sorry I cut you off there.
May I add, not at all, I'm sorry if I cut you off. May I add, I love what Adam said. All of those things about be as reliable as possible. If you've got 2 scripts and someone is going to do a script and then they can't, you want to go, who can I ring? Who can I call that will be able to deliver this script for me? That's exactly what you need.
Okay, excellent. And so how can writers network with producers and script editors that don't know them?
That's a great question. And I suppose when I used to work in Jam Media, and we had a pretty open door, and people could always come in for a cup of tea and a chat and introduce themselves, and that's how we found a lot of writers. I also would have brought a lot of writers with me on other productions that I worked on. I came from soap opera originally, and a lot of the writers I worked on that transitioned brilliantly across to work on children's television, which was fantastic. And it's always great to bring new writers into this world, because I was always pushing for Ireland to be a little animation hub, for writers. How they can go about it, I think their agent can contact people. I think you can contact people through LinkedIn. I think you can contact people through Twitter and go, I really like your episodes. I saw your episode this week. Could I just talk to you how you got into it, and have a 5-minute Zoom chat, or a short Zoom chat? I think everyone is really open, and I think everyone being at home is loving having chats with people. So I think people are a lot more open to it.
Oh, that's really good to know. Lena, do you have any tips that you'd like to share? Okay.
I do. I hope I haven't. I hope if you could pop up the screen, that would be super. Thank you.
Okay.
So yes, one of the things I have here is to bring your own life experience into the stories, and this is something that is about the originality and letting yourself shine. I've worked in writers' rooms where people have gone back to, we're all a lot older than the audience we're writing for, and just remembering how important kids' television was at that time and the magic that they had. And I think kids are a lot, they're an audience that if they're not happy with a show, they'll just turn off and watch something else. As adults, we tend to go, well, I watched series 2, I gave it a chance, I didn't really like it. But kids have so many choices, they'll go, switch, I will go to something else. So I'd say bring your own life experience to the show. I was doing a writer's room in DreamWorks, and a writer was talking about his brother used to tell him that he'd get arrested if we brought a library book back late. And it was just so funny. And we got an amazing episode just out of that small little nugget from when he was younger. So it's just about kind of going into your own experience and using that. And letting that unique perspective shine through. I just want to say, I thought Joshua's why video was amazing at the beginning of this, and it is about letting your unique perspective shine through. Be a well of ideas. Now that's easy to say because some people might be really good in a writer's room and some people might be better on the page, and that's totally okay. What I mean by being a well of ideas is being the, what about this? What if this? So if you can be a person that can just turn things and go, well, what if we tried this? And what if we tried this? And not hold on really, really tightly to your ideas. I think that will really help you. And always have extra ideas in your pocket. And this is about going first. If you go first, you get all your ideas out. But then someone else in the room might have the same ideas as you. So by the time you come around, you'll be like, oh no, what am I going to do? So even if they're one-liners, if you get the opportunity to be in a writer's room, even if it's only, if you have to bring 3 ideas, I would say even have short 1 ideas in your pocket, because then you can go. I had an experience of this where a writer, Brian Clark, said, I really wonder if, we can tell a story in Jessie and Essie about shyness. And all he had was his experience of being young and being shy and knowing what that felt like. And from that, we got an amazing episode. Again, he brought himself into the mix. Take a risk when you pitch. That's such an easy note to give, and it's so hard to do in real life. So I'm sorry, when you look at a note and you go, oh, that's a hard one. But I suppose take a risk. What Brian brought to the room there with his shy episode, the examples we'd given him weren't emotional examples of stories. And he said, I can see these characters and that this can work within this bracket for Jessie and Nessie, a show I did. And that really, really worked. Remember, you're pitching yourself, not just your idea. And yeah, what I mean by that is that just being, easy to work with, being on time, being reliable. Again, life happens. If you're ever going to be late, totally say in advance. And then know the broadcaster and the SVOD and know the audience. This is so important. And I've been guilty of this as well. There's a really good joke in a script and it's totally for an older audience than preschool. And I'll be like, oh, I want to leave it in because it's funny. But know your audience, care about your audience. Go, these are the people we're trying to entertain. And they're the people that you want them to get the joke, not the parents that might be happening to walk by. If it's a co-viewing show, by all means, put in a joke. But I just think, know the broadcaster, know the SWAT, and know the company you're going to be pitching for. Look at their shows, ask for sample episodes. And one of the big things is, as you asked me about trying to get into the writer's room, you could always ask if you could shadow, if there's writer's rooms coming up, if you could shadow in a room. We did a writer's room for Jessie and Nessie in New York, and I had this writer that I really wanted in the room. She was brilliant, but the head writer didn't know her, and he really wanted to bring his team in. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I said, can we have her come in and do notes? And she came in, she did notes, and then she got paid for notes. That's really important. Please never work for free. But she came in, she did the notes, and then she got hired to do 2 episodes, and then she got a great agent after that. So try get yourself in the room. Is that
Excellent.
Good?
Yeah, it's brilliant. Thank you so much, Gina. That was excellent tip. Thank you so much. And now we're going to bring in Jasmine Richards. Jasmine Richards and your fantastic room. And to introduce you, you happy for us to show your show reel?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Thank you.
In terms of the work that I'm doing now, I'm a children's author. Something that really struck me with the last 2 books that I published, books that are representative, tend to be about struggle or adversity. And I just want it to be about going to spy school, going to, witch and wizard school, just having adventures, just being a kid, being one of only a few Black publishers. I have the agency to make change, and that's part of my job, and I'm proud that that's part of my job because it kind of needs to happen. If you want to engage with children and actually adult readers as well, thinking about how these stories can be consumed in different mediums, like the smart writer should be thinking about that. I'm not saying they should know how to code or be videographers, but pairing up with people to find ways to reach established audiences, but also new ones as well.
Jasmine, that is an amazing showreel. Can you just tell the audience how that came about? Because I think it's lovely.
So actually, one of the big things I'm trying to do is sort of grow on talent as well for publishing and writing. So I had a intern sort of cut that together for me, and then there was some discussion as to whether we'd be able to keep the video, and I was like, we need to keep the video. She'll be crushed if she's watching. She'll be crushed if we don't use it. So I'm really glad that we did.
And I'm really glad that we did too. And I think the work that you're doing to bring interns in is fantastic, because publishing absolutely needs young talent at the bottom to grow. But Jasmine, you started off writing, you write books for children now and you do all that fantastic work, but you started off as an editor. So what was that like, that switching, and how did you get into it and make a success of it?
It's quite interesting, actually, my path to becoming a writer. When I thought about what a writer looked like, I didn't really see someone that looked like me. So I almost started in publishing because I've always loved books and I've always loved storytelling. So I kind of thought my way into that was editing, and I love editing, actually. But it was once I started editing authors that I realized that they're not kind of superhuman beings. They're just normal people who love stories like myself. And so that gave me the confidence to start writing. Actually, it was editing other authors. And what was great about that is, like, every book I edit was like doing a writing course for myself. So I think that's really important, is that sometimes you can come into writing from different directions.
Totally. And then bringing your TV experience into that, how does that compare?
Writing for TV was completely accidental. I said that to someone. I said, I fell into TV writing, and she said, you need to be more careful. But what happened there, and would be one piece of advice, is I was kind of reaching. So I had a baby. I decided I wasn't going to go back into a big publishing house to be an editor, and I kind of wanted to be writing and creating for myself and working from home and just having that flexibility. So I kind of reached out to my network. And so a guy that I used to edit his books, he is a showrunner on PJ Masks, and we had a coffee, and he said, would you like to have a go at writing an episode? And I said, I've never written for TV before. He goes, okay, you download final draft, I'll help you. And I think that is so important, is someone kind of paying it forward and saying, I'll take a chance on you and I'll mentor you. And so I did my first PJ Masks, and then I did another one and did another one. And I love it. I love writing for TV. And the big thing for me is the advice I used to give my authors that I edited was, don't give up your day job. Okay. So whatever you do, keep the day job and then also write. I think now maybe what my advice would be is maybe give up your day job, but try different types of writing, because they are more similar than they are different. Okay. So final draft, when I first looked at it, I was like, what is going on here? But stories are stories are stories. So really, once you get your head in it and around the system, they're not that different. So, and I think it's really important, if we're trying to survive as writers, to try our hands. I'll try our hand at different things. So during lockdown, it's been a really fertile time for me, because I've been doing TV scripts, I've been writing prose, but I've also been writing for Charisma AI, who create interactive stories based off of graphic novels. So I've been learning how to use a new system, branching narratives, sort of taking me into that game space, something again different, but always coming back to that idea of story and what does your character want? What obstacles are you going to put in your character's way? Like, it doesn't matter what platform you're writing for, that is always the same.
See, I love that. I really love it, because as somebody who is a writer and has a day job and 1,000 of other jobs, constantly thinking about, okay, what is my main job actually? When you have loads of these projects, and you also are a publisher, do it. You are like amazing. What made you want to do that?
Okay, so maybe it is too many hats. I don't know, but I'm loving your headgear. I'm up for different hats, like let's do this, right? So I set up Story Mix. We're not quite a publisher. I'm calling myself, and I keep on changing what we call ourselves, but in publishing terms, it's called a packager. So that's someone who you come up with an idea, you do the storyline, and then you kind of package up the talent. So maybe you find the writer and they'll write to the storyline that the packager has created, and you pitch that to a publisher off of maybe 3 samples. Sometimes you might attach an illustrator to that as well, but I prefer the word book incubator. So that's what I'm calling my business, which is called Story Mix. And one of my first jobs out of publishing was working for a packager. And it struck me as my eldest child was sort of turning 5 and we were moving into chapter books. I just couldn't see him. I just couldn't see him in any book. So at picture book level, I had to work at it. I'd maybe have to get some books from the States, but I could definitely see our family, which isn't an easy thing to do. My husband is from a Middle Eastern background, my family from a Caribbean background. We live in the Cotswolds. It's not an easy thing to do, to see yourself in books, but maybe in picture books I could, and then nothing in chapter books. And there's been so much talk in children's publishing and the same in TV about change. And I thought, how can I use my skill set as a former publisher, as a writer, as a creator, as a creative writing coach? So I created this book incubator with a specific focus on creating worlds and characters that come from diverse backgrounds, but the story isn't about their ethnicity, and the story isn't about adversity or struggle. It's just about kids, just like what you do, Shana, with your books. You know, like, let's have a mystery novel, but let's take it out of that Agatha Christie space and like show kids in all walks of life and all backgrounds. So that's what Story Mix does. And actually, we have just sold our first project. I had a little auction going on, so super exciting. And also looking for writers who write for TV who might like to try their hands at books. Just getting that in there.
That is amazing. That is so good. Congratulations to you, Jasmine.
You.
That's amazing. So do you have any tips for people who
I
may...
have a magic a tip sheet that should appear.
Oh, look.
Oh,
Hey.
there we go. Oh, it's quite small. Let me just leaning. So in terms of keeping writing, okay, and giving yourself your best chance, I would say build your network, and that's in person and that's through social media. Actually, adding on to what some other people have said, I want to throw in, if you're interested in writing for books, it's really worth either subscribing to the bookseller or going to your library when and if they open up, because the bookseller is the trade magazine for the industry, and there you'll find out if people are starting up new agencies, and if they are, you should get in there before their sort of rosters fill up. So if you're looking for an agent, something like the bookseller would be great. But yeah, definitely through your social media, start following editors, start following agents, start following other authors. Again, reaching out to your existing network. So the PJ Masks opportunity wouldn't have happened unless I reached out and I said, oh, hey, I'm really interested in finding more about TV. Could you just talk me through that? And keep an eye out for call outs from organizations. So I've just written this digital short story, an interactive short story, and that was because of a call out from Nesta, who wanted to try and reach children in different way when it comes to reading. And then I ended up collaborating with someone and learning what Unity is. I didn't know what Unity was before this. This is something that you build sort of websites in, and now we have an interactive story. So looking out for interesting call outs, artsjobs.co.uk is another great place. And lastly, just pay it forward. So in that same way that the person I worked with on PJ Masks was just like, well, let me help you. In the same way, I will try and help other people, because it's about karma, not to get too hippy dippy about it. It's about karma, and it will, it's just pass the energy around and help each other. And I think that's the way we should all try and be.
And I completely agree with you, Jasmine. I'm really proud of you. Congratulations on your new project. Oh, it's amazing. Thank you. Hey, David Varela. You know what Unity is, I'm sure, Mr. Interactive.
Yeah. I've been there.
You've been there. So can we show, you happy for us to show your video, David?
Yep, that'd be great.
Yep. Okay.
By heck, Gromit, these job orders are really taking the biscuit. Oh. To the Spick and Spanmobile. If we're going to fix up a whole city, we're going to need a recruitment drive. Step on it, Gromit. There's not a moment to lose. The big fix-up needs your help. Get cracking.
Well, that looks very cool. David, can you tell us what you've been doing on that and what it is?
I've been co-writer on it, co-writing with Finbar Hawkins, who is a full-time creative director at Aardman, and it's a crossover between animation and games. Really, it's bringing Wallace and Gromit into the world of augmented reality. So you'll be able to get messages from Wallace and Gromit on your phone. You'll even be able to see things like the rocket from A Grand Day Out landing in your back garden. You'll be getting holographic messages from Wallace as you help their new business, Spick and Spanners, to fix up the city of Bristol. It should be coming out, I think, in October-ish. And the original idea was for it to involve a lot of site-specific augmented reality play that may or may not be possible with lockdown. But the idea is to try and bring this very traditional medium of claymation into new media, while still telling a really good old-fashioned Wallace and Gromit story.
And so, David, like, how do you get into something like that? How do you get into games writing? Do you need to have a tech or games background?
Not at all. I certainly don't. I come from a very traditional sort of writerly education. I studied English at university, and it was a very old-fashioned English course as well. The good news is there is a real demand for new voices, new writers, diverse backgrounds. It is quite a male, pale, and stale industry at the moment, and there is a real call for new writers to apply and to get into and be represented in games. The good news and the bad news is there is no single path into becoming a games writer. It's a bit of a wild west. It is not a very well organized market. For example, there aren't really any games agents out there. If you're a writer in games, you're probably doing the legwork yourself, representing yourself. It's mostly based on freelance contracts, which can vary from a few days up to a few months. My break came having been a freelance writer in multiple media for a few years. I answered a job ad in the Media Guardian, if you remember that old papery thing about 15 years ago. And I'd been working in theatre and advertising and radio and doing short films. And this particular game, the first game I worked on, was an alternate reality game, which basically meant creating a fictional world that crossed over between the online world and the real world. So I was creating websites for fictional companies and running fictional social media feeds for characters. So actually using a lot of the skills that I've been using doing corporate websites for companies, but this time combining it with the work I've been doing in fiction, and that versatility that I developed, as some of the other speakers have already said, having many strings to your bow, being able to write for many different media is really useful. And in this case, all of those different skills that I had were to be able to be applied in creating a single fictional project. But that was me. That was my weird and unique path into the industry 15 years ago. Nowadays, there are better places to be looking than the Media Guardian. Keep an eye on Twitter. There is a hashtag game writing. Hashtag game writing is pretty good. I also do regular keyword searches for looking for a writer and things like that, which can be surprisingly fruitful. Kickstarter, if you're looking for a first opportunity, watch Kickstarter for games projects that are being made by indies or first-time studios, because they will probably need a writer and they don't realize they need a writer. And if you can give them a little wave and introduce yourself. They might be really grateful for that and will give you a break if you want to get into it for the first time. There are also groups on Facebook. For example, there's one called Game Writers on Facebook, which is a pretty good source of job ads and opportunities. And there are some game job websites. GameDevJobs.io is quite useful, and GamesIndustry.biz is a website for the industry, and they have a job section as well. But mostly it's about networking. All the best games jobs I've had have been the second or third project I've done with a particular team or a particular studio. The Wallace and Gromit thing came via Twitter. I was tweeting about it being my last day on a long project, and Finbar, who I'd worked with on a BBC Bite Size project at Aardman, messaged me and said, "Oh, we've got a thing coming up. Do you fancy applying?" And after a very serious writing test and a lot of auditioning, I ended up getting that Wallace and Gromit job.
So what does a writing test look like in an interactive piece? And when you're writing for games, is it very different from script writing or writing a book? I assume there's lots of writing in Google spreadsheets and Excel. Is that wrong?
There can be. It depends what direction you're coming from, I guess. With the Wallace and Gromit project, for example, it's a combination between very traditional animation and games. I was probably more coming from the game side. So my writing test was about proving I could write for Wallace and Gromit, for that tone of voice, for the sort of core animation elements of it, because they were quite confident in my games writing and interactive skills. I'm assuming that most of the audience here will be coming from more traditional media, less interactive media. So the important things to be able to prove in a writing test are that you can allow for interactivity. There are generally sort of very few cutscenes, very few sort of traditional animated or filmed scenes in a game. So you need to be able to demonstrate that you can tell stories in many different ways. And also, don't just expect to be writing for a big budget console game. There are so many different types of games out there. There are mobile games, browser-based games, some are like text-only games, card games, tabletop games, all these different formats. And generally speaking, if you're doing a writing test, every one of them is going to be different because every game is usually built with a different structure underlying it. So yeah, you might end up writing into a spreadsheet, but it'll be, one test might be we need 10 lines for this particular character when they've succeeded, and we need 10 different ways for them to say that they've been successful, all in character, all less than 30 characters long. It will be really specific for the demands of that particular game.
Really, really, really interesting. Like, how many different ways can you say we've done it? Amazing. Now I'm like, I want to do that test just for fun because I've got nothing else to do. David, have you got some top tips for everybody at home?
I have. Bring up the slide.
Bring up the tips.
Some of the things, that are worth mentioning. First of all, there was a survey, a sort of demographic survey done last year of gamers in America specifically, but it's fairly representative of the global market, that said 21% of gamers are under 18. So that's 79% of gamers are adults. It's not just a kids medium. In fact, in that same survey, they found another 21% of gamers are over 50. So if you're looking to get into games, it is an adult-dominated audience. The average gamer is in their late 30s. So don't just imagine that it's going to be a childish audience and that you can't tell sophisticated stories. One of the reasons that we need more writers from more diverse backgrounds is that audience is getting more sophisticated, demanding stories from across a greater range of genres, and people who can bring a sort of greater range of personal experience into those stories. As Lena was saying, that's generally what really connects with an audience, is when a writer can bring their personal experience. So the other thing to realize is that the most narrative heavy games are actually probably the ones that are aimed at an older audience. The Last of Us 2, which came out a week or two ago, has just become the fastest selling PlayStation exclusive game ever. And that's an 18 certificate game that makes Chernobyl look like the Chuckle Brothers. It is pretty grim stuff. You're not necessarily gonna be telling stories that are by sort of for kids and about kids. So bear that in mind. The second point there, again, if you're coming from a background where you're already an established writer in other media, the one thing you're going to have to be able to demonstrate is this ability to deal with interactivity. And the fastest, cheapest, easiest way to do that is with Twine, which is a text-based sort of text adventure maker, really. It's free, it's browser-based. You can find it right now on a website called twinery.org, so twine with RY on the end, .org. And you need no programming skills whatsoever. It's designed for writers and to be kind of idiot-proof. If you can do a short story in Twine that shows a bit of branching narrative, how you can accommodate player choice, show how you can have different endings, so how you can make a story feel like the ending is inevitable, even though the player has made various choices along the way, then that's going to stand you in really good stead alongside your other portfolio pieces to show that you can make a game. You can handle the demands of not having complete control over your hero or heroine and what they do in the story. Third point there is I edited this one. It was originally play games, but playing games isn't enough. You have to study them. You have to think about how they work and sort of get under the hood a bit, because they use very different techniques for storytelling. In TV and film, the mantra is show, don't tell. In games, it's do, don't show, don't tell. You want the player to be doing things, and that's how they learn and experience the story. The more you are giving them the opportunity to sit back and absorb story, they are less involved in the story themselves. So play games, but also as you're playing, think about where you're picking up information. What's making me feel this emotion? And watch, there's some great criticism on YouTube as well. If you look up a series called Extra Credits, really fun, bite-sized criticism of games that shows, that helps expose the game design and the mechanics under the hood of games. Also, critics like Feminist Frequency is worth looking up for like intelligent criticism, the kind of criticism you would expect of literature being applied to games. It's really useful and really helpful to be thinking about them in grown-up terms, not just as a kid's format. The fourth point I kind of mentioned already, looking beyond consoles. Console gaming, so-called AAA gaming, is extremely high budget. It has relatively few writers in it. It's probably, in terms of writing work, it probably only accounts for a small percentage of the potential writing work that games writers can be doing. So look at tabletop role-playing games, look at card games, look at mobile games in particular, other formats of games that you may be able to get your break in more easily than trying to go for a multi-million-dollar console game. It's like trying to get a studio blockbuster made as your first movie. It's unlikely. It does happen occasionally that you might get one of those jobs, but you're more likely to get your break, get experience in something that's more indie. And yeah, finally, don't depend on agents. I like agents. Agents are lovely, but in the games industry, there are maybe one or two who actually know the business, know what they're doing, know who to talk to. So yeah, you're going to have to do the legwork yourself, I'm afraid. That's the bad news. But it means the control is in your hands. So that's the good news.
Absolutely fantastic. And the control is in my hands. Oh no, there you are. There you all are. Brilliant. I'm so glad you're all back. So we because we talk so brilliantly with each other, we don't have time for a live Q&A, but we're going to have our Q&A within the chat as this session ends. So we will be online for another 30 minutes in the chat so we can answer any are coming through. Before we go, I need to thank everybody. I have learned so much from all of you this morning, and the team are brilliant. And I also need to thank the fantastic tech team behind the scenes at CMC. They are so slick, it's unbelievable. So thank you to everybody at CMC, and thank you to my panel. There's some things I need to tell you before we go. So if you haven't checked them out already, there are some great videos in the Perspective On VOD strand, which offer more particular interest to those of us writing content. Perspective On Content Quilting is about the growth in international co-production in live action drama with Nina Han from Nickelodeon. Perspective On LGBTQ+ Now is about increasing and normalising the appearance of LGBTQ+ characters in kids' content. Listening to kids is a great insight in how to hear what the audience is saying, is as much in, I can't talk today, but the audience is saying in much more realistic ways. And the golden rules for creating kids' cartoons delivers just what it says on the tin. As always, you can find all the information about the content in the VOD strands and the live webinar schedule on the CMC app, which is sponsored by S4C. Thank you, S4C. Plus, it's all on the website and here on the conference platform. So back chat, that's what's opening up now for 30 minutes. So you click on the chat icon in the top right of the screen when it appears, and then we'll also be continuing the writers chat over the next few days over in the Children's Media Conference Facebook group. Next up here is the Commissioner conversation with Nickelodeon and Warner, which is of course the Cartoon Network family of channels. Plus we have an amazing changemaker. And if you haven't booked it yet, it's karaoke tonight, people. So once again, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you in the chat. Bye.